At Ernst Young, we've just come out with a new publication as one of a series that we do on the mining industry and trying to do a bit of analysis behind the obvious publicity things that come out. This one's called Life After Debt, and it follows up from one we did last year called The Wall of Debt, which was an analysis of the major mining companies and what happened to their financial situation before the great crash and during the crash and now. Now, what we found was that the big mining companies between 2002 and 2008 started making more money than they could have dreamt about because the metal prices increased so much, quite unexpectedly. But the behavior of the mining companies during that period was really very strange. They had all this money, and what they did is they decided to go and acquire other mining companies. They started to grow by acquisition, not by organic growth. They weren't commissioning new mines. What they were doing was buying each other. And how they did it was they borrowed the money. Overwhelmingly, they got themselves into an enormous amount of debt, particularly in the years 2007 and 2008. So what's happened is that we think that the global mining industry has lost about 2 years of growth. But while all of this was happening, all the great credit crunch and the difficulties that the Western economies were suffering, largely because of fiscal stimulus and various other changes, the Chinese economy, behind the scenes, was taking up the slack. And its economy has been growing at this astounding rate. This year it looks as if it's going to be well over 11%. And its consumption of these vitally important metals is continuing to increase. Now, and we're in the second quarter of 2010, the Western economies, they're now beginning to grow their consumption of the metals as well. So we're getting into a very interesting situation where, in the short term at least, it looks as if there's going to be a real shortage of supply of the key metals. Now that's iron ore, copper, to an extent aluminium, nickel, zinc, lead, and many of the industrial minerals, particularly potash, phosphates and so on, which we need for fertilizers. We're going to be in for an interesting time in the next couple of years until supply of these vitally important materials can catch up with the demand. Now, metal prices are again in an interesting situation. There's a tendency for analysts, journalists, commentators to look at metal prices historically and to say, oh, the gold price is very high at the moment, it's $1,200 an ounce or whatever, or the iron ore price is high, copper prices, $7,000 a ton, look pretty high. It's essential to look at the metal prices in real terms. You've got to deflate them to have a look and see what they look like in inflation-adjusted terms. And if you do that, and we've looked back to 1880, as far back as that, actually the metals are pretty cheap at the moment on a historical basis. They're certainly not as expensive as people think that they are. And there doesn't seem to be much pressure, downward pressure on the prices at the moment. You can't bring on a new copper mine in a matter of a year or so. It takes about 10 years from discovery to production for a new big copper project. That leads us to believe that there's going to be a considerable squeeze in the next couple of years, and I expect to see sustained higher prices for most of the metals.